Welcome to Western Contours Podcast, sharing experiences, providing insight, and looking for solutions to become better hunters. We talk gear, on and off season preparation, tips and tactics, conservation, and finding inspiration in the outdoors as sportsmen and women. Thank you for joining us as we share our love for all things Western hunting. So we're on with my buddy, Mr. Derek Depew, Mountain Hunter Box fame. What's up, brother?
What's going on, man?
75 hard, dude. So we're, I think we're only a couple weeks separated on our deal with our starts there. We were kind of hitting, talking about that before we hit record, so I don't want to bore everybody, but real quick, man, what do you think of that program thus far, and how's it working out for you?
It's no joke, man. It's serious. Going into it, I had a lot of people saying, man, what are you doing that for? That's dumb. And you got to, things like, you don't take a picture, so you got to start over. I'm not doing that. That's what the majority of people said. Or, you drink 127 ounces of water, not 128, and you got to start over to day one. That makes no sense. That's stupid. But I'm like, if you look at it from a diet standpoint, I understand. Because let's face it, if you miss calories or you miss a glass of water when you're dieting hardcore, it's not going to kill you. This is more about mental strength and diving into getting rid of all those excuses and the wasted time throughout the day.
Yeah, and follow through. To me, that's the biggest, because that mundane task of taking that picture. I
almost forgot last night, and it sent me a message. You haven't completed your tasks yet. And I'm looking at the clock. It's like 11:15. I was like, oh, shit.
Dude.
I don't know why I filmed, and I was like, oh, it's just a picture. Thank God.
It was 12 minutes to midnight. I'm usually in bed between 10 and 10:30, and I was already asleep. I don't know how or why. I popped up and I go, shit, my picture. And I looked at the time. Oh shit, 12 minutes. That's when I set it on the app, was mine is at midnight. So I hopped up and I grabbed my phone off the nightstand, and my phone's freaking updating. And I'm like, son of a bitch. So I put the phone down and I'm like looking around, and then oh shit, ran in the kitchen, grabbed my work phone off the charger, ran in the bathroom, man, ripped that thing up, turned the light on, snap. Got it. And the next day, when I went to log or hit, you touch on the app so you can start logging your day progress. And there's a picture of Frisella standing there like, did you really do it, you little bitch?
With his arms crossed.
Yeah. Continue or start over. And I was like, son of a bitch. I had to look and see if you missed logging it, if that started you over. And I was like nervous as hell. And it didn't. So we're good. I think I'm 30 or 31 days in at this point. And what's funny is I've progressed through this. The days or the weeks that I'm doing, they don't matter. The only thing that matters is day 75 at this point, or excuse me, day 76, because that's when it's really done, But man, what a phenomenal approach to just show you how you make excuses, or you know what I mean? It's just, man, I'm digging it, dude. It's such a good program so far.
So day one, it's a funny story. I get this stuff around 1:00. I get the book in the mail. Somebody sent it to me as a gift. And, I open it up. I'm like, cool. They're like, I better download the app, right? Again, it's like 1:00 in the afternoon. I download the app, I open it, and I'm reading something on the front page, and I hit next. It says, 75 hard has now begun, day 1. And I'm like, what? I'm like, no, I was tomorrow.
Yeah.
Tomorrow. And there was no way to go back. So I was like, all right. So I rushed everything, man. And I ate clean all day, did my water. I was done. I had everything done. And it was 12 minutes before midnight when I started reading. So I'm reading. I finished that page at 12:01. And I hop on. I'm like,
missed it.
I got to start back one. Luckily, it was day 1. But so I get on the horn. I was talking with Bear and Bear Taylor. He just completed 75 hard. Dude, awesome dude. Super motivational. So I'm like, bro, this is what happened. He's like, well, you don't have to start over if you miss midnight. You can adjust that.
Yeah.
See at the time you go to bed. And I'm like, well, that's stupid because I already started. So I got another day of this stuff, but it's all right. I'm glad it was day 1 and not like day 10.
Yeah. And then, man, it's funny how your personal accountability grows or increases as you progress through your days, right? Because whereas you typically be like, oh, I could do that tomorrow, right? You put that one thing off and, man, I can't stand it now. It's like, oh no, I got to do it now. I got to get this done right now.
And like the day you're saying, as the days go by, the more and more you shut that off. Like I find myself now at about a 50-50. You know what I mean? Like it comes in and I'm like, I'll just finish it later. I'm like, no, I won't finish it later. I'm doing this now.
Yeah.
And there's other times where I'm like, I'll just do this later. And I just go on about my business. I'm getting better at it now.
It hasn't been. This is gonna sound like bullshit, right? But it hasn't been as hard as I thought it was gonna be, right? I kind of went into this thing blindly with no real expectation, right? I was just like, I'm gonna do this shit because I think I could do it, dude. Day 24, I don't know what it was. And you think about it, day 24, you're about a third of the way through the damn thing, and man, it was a struggle. The entire day was a struggle for me to get through. It was just like, fuck, I got to drink another 30 goddamn ounces of water. It's the weirdest thing, man, how that day hit me. And when I made it through that day and I reflected on it, just understanding that the whole day I didn't want to do it. It was just like I didn't want to be there, and I still did it. It even made it easier after that because you're like, I had all the excuses in the world, man. My internal little girl was like, let's stop now.
I was at that birthday party today, and like I said, there were sweets and candy, the piñata, the candy, the pop, the coolers of ice cold Dr. Pepper. I'm like, you know what? Screw it. I don't need this program. I'm just going to have a can of Dr. Pepper. I'm like, no, you're not. You made it this far, dummy. All that suffering for nothing.
Oh, man. It's a great program. Anybody listening, I'd say check it out. If you think you got it together and you think that you're utilizing your time and not making excuses, I guarantee you, I'll buy you a 6-month subscription to Mountain Hunter Box. It will open your freaking eyes. Cause I'm as busy as and I'm probably not, right? I don't even feel right saying this with doing this, but I'm as busy as you can get, between the day gig and everything else I have going on. And those irons in the fire, there's somebody that has way freaking more, and my excuses, they're about shit. So
the problem with that is that with what we're doing and where we're at in businesses, we let everything compound and then just bust through it all and get it all done. And if things start to slowly come back and build because of our excuses of letting things I'll do it later. And then to where they've got it all straight, not all, and they don't have it all together, but they figured out better ways to keep it streamlined, constantly moving. They know these days this keeps this moving, you know what I mean? So they're able to tackle quite a bit more. And that's hopefully what I'm gaining what we're going to gain from this program.
Yeah. I tell you what, I had a really good lesson with that because I got a pretty substantial order for bino flies. And I had to legitimately sit down and figure out, because everything is made with these two hands, right? So I had to legitimately sit down and figure out how much time every single step took so I could make sure I delivered on my commitment to the deadline. And that it was an impressive, and maybe it's just me, it was an impressive feat on my side, realizing that, okay, boom, 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 boom. And even with a couple miscalculations, I'm like, crap, I'm behind. And I probably had 3 weeks to go, but I'm behind because this should have taken so many days. That somehow ties back into the utilization of time in this, right? And hopefully this makes it a habit, because that was a one-off at the moment. And it was very eye-opening, but it wasn't habitual. You know what I mean? And I'm hoping that this makes things more habitual as I realize the power of this program.
I think another thing for this for me too was to get me better prepared for elk season. If, I'm ready to go by then, that I'm in somewhat of good shape, being that I can't do a lot of working out. I can't hike. I can't do all that stuff. At least I can get my body and my mind right as far as nutrition and other things. So I'm as close to dialed in as I could be when elk season arrives.
Hell yeah. That, I can't wait to see the benefit on the mountain with it, right? Because it definitely lends itself to those mornings where you wake up and you're like a weekend and you're just beat to all hell, right? The chase has been, in favor of the elk, and everyone has those mornings. I don't care who you are, you're going to have them on the mountain. And I'm hoping that this translates to that as well. I can't see it not, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, shoot, you brought it up. Let's talk a little out-of-state elk prep, man. So, both of us are making pretty good jaunts to get into elk woods. And there's a ton of information, right? And some of this will be recaps. But there's nuances of prepping for an out-of-state hunt that I don't want to say are missed, but aren't really in one place. So I'm hoping that, by the end of this, a guy could, hear this and just say, you know what, screw it. These guys are right. I'm going for it. So I kind of wanted to go down that road, man, and start talking about how we go about planning an out-of-state hunt, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'll let you kind of lead us off, right? And I'm sure that our methods are similar, but let's start with, planning your attack.
Okay. So we'll start with my first hunt that I planned. I've never been out west. So to me it was, I'm going into the unknown, 100% unknown. I didn't know anybody out there. I didn't know what I was doing. I just started planning, right? And I thought, this is never going to happen. They're too expensive. In my eyes, growing up, out of elk hunting realm, we got deer and turkey. That's about it. Was the cost. That was their biggest thing. Is I can't afford this. When in reality, if you break it down, it's actually not bad. I mean, if you think about laying all the funds down right now, it's going to cost me this. Yeah, it's going to. You'll never get it done because you'll think about what it's going to cost from here. 2 years from now, you're going to be thinking about the same thing. So what I did was I figured out what my tags were going to cost. Figured out what my travel time, like the distance of travel, what I'm getting miles per gallon. So about average what my fuel is going to cost. And then food, right? Because that's it in a nutshell. That's what you need to know. Everything else is irrelevant. If you've hunted any other species, then you have hunting equipment that's going to suffice at least for your first year. You might suffer a little more than most, but you'll get through it. And by doing that, you're going to get a better grasp on the things that you need and the things that you absolutely do not need. More importantly, the things that you don't need. I went in the first year. I had some backpacking pack from Mystery Ranch. I had a 9-pound sleeping bag I had, like, literally every day I was carrying around a 56-pound pack. And I was in camp with a couple guys who invited me. It ended up going a year early. So I had to plan even quicker. But I was so unprepared. Physically, mentally, gear-wise, everything wasn't right, you know. I was off on everything. I didn't have any merino. I just had my base layers that were synthetic, by the way. Terrible idea, in my opinion. I know there's guys that run synthetic. But when you're spending 8 to 10 days, it lasts you a day. You might be able to get a second day out of synthetic. I don't recommend it, but it gets pretty gross. So, I learned quickly a lot of that stuff. I mean, you can get through the hunt with it, you know. So I figured out that my first hunt was going to cost me to go hunt elk on my own. It was going to be around $1,400 round trip. I could probably cut the price a little bit, but $1,400 is where I was at. So I knew if I can get, you know, I just broke it down. I've got 24 months from now until I go hunt. I need to save X per month, which means I need to save X per week or 2 weeks. I mean, it basically broke down to like an extra meal a day. I'm saving the money. I don't eat out. I don't get that cup of coffee in the morning. That money goes, I pack a lunch. That money goes towards my elk hunt. Set it aside. There, you've got it. Now you can go. So I'm planning for 2 years out, and I meet up with some guys when we go a year. It ends up being, he's like, yeah, we need an extra guy for camp. We had some guys bail. Would you be interested? I was like, oh, it's in like a month and a half. I'm like, I'm going to make this happen either way. These guys hunt elk. They know what they're doing. I don't. This would be a huge opportunity for me to tag along, and we'll move from there. So my planning for that was, I started going through, like, somebody turned me on to Land of the Free, right? The very first series they did. This was before the second one came out, 2.0. And I started watching. I was like, man, this is good, right? And of course, there's other programs, and they're all very beneficial, right? And there's a lot of guys out there, and a lot of content out there. What I did was I ordered a book, and it was DIY elk hunting, it was called. And I don't read books, so I got the audio version. No, I didn't at the time. And he pretty much broke it down the same way. Like, people tell me, oh, you're lucky you get to elk hunt. It's like, I'm not lucky. I see you throwing that Wendy's bag in the garbage. I haven't eaten a fast food meal because, like, you know, that money goes towards my elk hunt. He's like, it's just prioritizing. So he goes into elk habitat, elk behavior, things like that. But when it came down to planning my own elk hunt, I mean, like I said, I was starting green, fresh. I didn't have direction. I got into as many elk hunting groups as possible. I got into, I listened to everything, every podcast elk hunting related that I could. What benefited me was I got in a giveaway and I won an elk calling package. So I got calls, I got a bugle tube, I got quite a bit of stuff. But part of that was I got a calling lesson, a 3-day calling lesson from Michael Batiste. So I got to get on one. So he got, you know, and I could blow a turkey diaphragm, but let me tell you, me trying to make an elk sound, I was like Tweety birds, man. I just couldn't do it. It was terrible. So he got me dialed into just the basic, and I'm telling you, all day, every day. That's all I did until I could get it to where at least I can make the basic elk sounds. I had an app on my phone, and let me see if I can remember what it was. It was for, like, gear lists, right? So you can track what you have, what you need, what you're taking, what you're going to leave behind. You can do it all in this app. The problem with the app that I had, okay, it's called Gear Inventory. So in that app, you can enter all the gear that you have in there. It will give you weights. It will give you everything you need. What's good about that is you have a checklist now, so you don't forget to get anything. As you're going through it, you can check, guys say, well, you're going to need this. You could throw it on there, and you could check the box that says you don't have it. So then it's marked, hey, I don't have this. And I went through that. After my first elk hunt, I got rid of half of that stuff because I didn't need it. But it was really good to keep me organized for that. You know what I mean? It was really good to keep my gear together. I knew what I had and what I needed. So that worked out well. I would say where to hunt was probably one of the toughest for me, because the first thing I did, like everybody who's planning their first elk hunt, was I got on a forum. What's the best unit? I'm not looking to kill something. All the forums, the first thing I did was walk in and say, I want to go somewhere where I can just get on elk. I'm not looking for your best spot, right? That is the standard question that's across all elk forums.
Ridicule.
Guys, don't ask that question. I'm going to give you that courtesy. Don't go on these forums and say, where can I go hunt elk? Because they're going to tell you where there's elk, or they're going to tell you in the woods or some bullshit. Nobody's going to tell you a spot where there's elk. I didn't realize how sacred this was until I dove into it. So that was probably the biggest challenge for me.
That's kind of chicken shit, man. I'm going to just call it out, right? Because, as much as we want to say how we need to support each other and new guys and people coming in, man, I've seen some of those forums and holy, now I'll qualify it, right? Now, if a guy is like, hey, where is that? And there's like a grip and grin or something, like, okay, I get it. Or if a guy has, a quick clip or something with elk, where is that is not the appropriate question. But for somebody just to shit on a guy, you look at unit, call it 71 in Colorado. That's a big fucking unit, man. So not to just be like, I don't know. Anywho, I won't even go off on that fucking thing.
It's unreal. Like, good questions to ask are, if I take this trailhead, am I going to run into bad obstacles? Or, I see there's a campground here. Is this access for horse trail? You could just do your research, and then you can ask questions about those areas that you're hunting. And you can even call, as every podcast ever tells you, you can call the Department of Colorado or wherever you're going, Department of Wildlife or Fish and Game, whatever they're called in that state. And they will answer your questions. They will answer, what's going on in that area. They'll answer, access, river crossings. If you got to cross water, how easy that is, or if it's going to be deep or what. Those are the questions I asked on our first go without those other guys that I went with my first year. Called them up. I said, these are the areas I'm looking. It looks like there's some timber cuts here. Are these active? Are they out there logging now? He's like, no, it shows active on the maps, but they're not active now. They're not working in there. I would stay away from this area because there's tons of campers in there, and that gets inundated with hunters in the season. Like, he was very helpful. But I had questions lined up. So, get a piece of paper, a pen, write down 5 questions that you need the answers to, that you're having a hard time with. Because asking on Facebook, those guys, I know they elk hunt. The problem is they're going to give you bullshit answers most of the time. Mm-hmm. So have some good questions lined up, and they will be more than happy to help you. So they're not going to tell you where the elk are again, but they will definitely break it down and some of the questions you have to make things easier for you when you get there, and to have a better idea what to expect when you get there.
So I don't know. I've never been one to get on those forums and do that kind of stuff, right? I always feel like my best learning is hands-on, right? Regardless of what it is. So for me, I get that you want to help it out, but at the same time, it's okay not to know shit and still go get out in the woods, right? Yeah. And go and struggle and figure it out. There's, without asking the question, I'm not deterring a guy from doing that if that's how they choose, but, knowing that you're going to catch shit, for me, it's like, man, you can get on Go Hunt. Yeah, it's going to cost you, I think the membership is well, it's up there. It's like $134 for the year. But it's a hell of a resource if you're serious about, really delving into it. A great resource. And if not, you can get on, I don't want to say Colorado, but it's easy pickings in terms of, that first out of state elk hunt, right? Because you got the OTC opportunities.
It's the closest elk hunt to the eastern states. That's why a lot of guys go there. For travel purposes, it is 20 to 24 hours for most of us. Whereas you jump into Wyoming and some of them other ones, you're looking at 29. If you get into Idaho, you're looking at 30 plus hours. Like, it is a jaunt to get to those other states, drive time. I mean, if you're flying and you've got the logistics figured out for flying, then I guess it doesn't matter. But I think that's the reason why a lot of outer staters jump on Colorado out the gate, because it's close. You know what I mean? And
well, to me, I mean, and I hate to do this to the folks in Colorado, right? Because it's already crowded, but it lends itself to that guy that just wants to get into it and is trying to figure it out, because you can just go hunt elk. You don't have to know shit. You can get on, CPW. They do a great job with the data that they put on their website.
They're very thorough.
Yeah. You can pick that stuff apart. And honestly, I think you probably do better than getting your ass handed to you on a forum, asking some of the questions. But you can absolutely get into elk numbers and have a good understanding. And like you're saying, you can plan it. I don't want to drive all the way to to 62, which is damn near the western edge of the state. And I can hunt here in 74 and 16, which is, that north central area. I think that's outside of Fort Collins, just west of Fort Collins. I'm just people don't take these units. I'm saying, seriously, if you're listening to it for that, but I'm just, examples of, and there's a ton of information, again, that Colorado provides. But I swear the best is just saying I'm going to do it and committing to it. And just learning that information, you'll be better off for it, right? If I rely on Derek Depew on a forum and he's ready to give me shit, it's going to be discouraging, but then you still don't know where to look, right? Because it just didn't get me anywhere.
Yeah, I agree. Yep. So I would say, I'm just going to throw this out there. You can see on any one of the mapping programs. If you get on Onyx or Base Map, or if you get on like Top Rock, Go Hunt, anything that's going to be related to mapping and elk hunting, you're going to see that most from central to western, or even east central to the western part of the state, are going to be units with huntable elk. The eastern part of that state is a lot of ranches and stuff, so there's not a lot of public hunting over there. That's why you don't see a lot of that talked about. But most of the over-the-counter units, I'm just going to say all the over-the-counter units have elk in them. None of those units don't have elk. It's not like you're going to go in there and if you do everything right, you're going to run into elk, right? Mm-hmm. Oh, I mean, to a point. But so don't get so caught up on, oh my God, I got to go to this unit, or I can't go to that unit. That one's terrible. I got to go to this one. Listen, my first year on ourselves, we went to a unit that was very low average and very low numbers, very low kill, and very high hunter numbers. We went in and we got into elk about a half dozen times about 6 days out of the 10, we were in elk. And then the next year we went into a much higher ranked unit and we saw elk once. So don't be 100% caught up on the numbers that you're seeing. If you're confident in what you're mapping out and you're confident in the areas that you're going into, if you've done your research and you know how the elk are and how they behave and you know the hunter's patterns, you have an idea, you'll learn over time, then you can pretty much go to any unit and get into elk. It may not be anything more than a 4x4 or a 5x5, but who cares? You're going over to have a good time.
Mm-hmm.
Keep an open mind that you just go in there to see elk. And if you do that, I think your odds are going to go through the roof.
So I'm going to bring it up just because you said it. It was, it'll be a talking point if I remember later in the episode here. But when you start looking at the stats, right, as you're going through, CPW or Go Hunt, whatever it is, and a lot of guys, yes, we want to increase our chances, right, of being in that 10%. But there is something to be said about looking at a unit that has a lower success rate with huntable elk, because you're likely going to come across less people, less hunters.
Yes.
Hence, less hunting pressure, less pressure on the elk. And it may make your opportunities, and that's kind of what I'm hearing, what you're saying, with 6 out of 10, you're having interactions. Those lower number units are that way for a reason, and everyone seems to shy away from them. But success is in those units, right, across the board. I mean, you're talking 10% success. There's a couple of units that I've noticed that are lower than that. But it's, is that 10%, is that 7 or 8% because the numbers are less? I don't know how they actually figure that stuff out. If it's total in that unit, I don't know how they would even get a number on some of those OTC units, if guys aren't reporting.
One thing I do, here's a little tip, I guess you can call it, not that I'm an expert or I know what I'm doing, but one thing I'll do when I look at percentages, let's just say the unit has a 20 to 100 bull to cow ratio, and you're looking at a success rate of, if you're going in for an archery hunt, and you're looking at a success rate of about 9%. If you look at muzzleloader success rate, rifle success rate, and all those other success rates, and they're much higher, you have to understand that bow hunting's hard as it is, and when you're chasing elk through mountains, bow hunting is much tougher. It doesn't mean that the rest of those hunters didn't see elk and didn't get into elk. It just means those who were successful and killed those elk.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't mean that the other 90% of the people that went there got skunked. It just means those tags weren't punched for whatever reason.
Right.
So it's something I like to keep in my head what I'll do. And I know, listen, I understand that, certain times of year elk are in certain places, right? So it's going to differ from rifle to archery and things like that. I know that. In some units, they stay in the same areas, but for the most part, they're moving. But if I'm seeing quite a bit higher across every season but archery, and archery is at 7 or 8%, I'm going to look into that unit a little deeper. And I'm going to start, I'll dive into Google Earth. I'll dive into Onyx, Base Map, whatever. I'll really pick apart the unit and see, hey, there's some really good looking spots in here. And you don't have to rule that unit out. Just have in the back of your mind. If nothing else is going around in the prime unit that you thought, hey, I'm going to go in here, we're going to have elk everywhere, and you go in there and your plan falls apart, leave that one as your backup plan. You can go in there in those couple areas in that unit and just, grind through them and see what you come across. You might surprise yourself and find yourself in a bugle forest. I mean, you never know.
So for me, right, the planning portion of this, right, and you talked about, your dollars, right, is preparing the entire year, preparing for 2 years. I mean, I think you said $1,500, right? So if you look at what $1,500 is, and that's considering that you have most of the gear you need, right? $1,500 is $5 a day for 300 days out of the year. It's not a huge task, right? It really isn't a huge task.
No, and that's what when that book, he said, it's a cup of coffee a day.
Mm-hmm.
Don't get your Starbucks coffee or wherever you go get your coffee because it costs you $5. Don't get your coffee and save that $5 and you can go home. That's how he put it. I don't drink $5 coffee. I never will, but.
But I mean, really that portion of the planning isn't, it's not an arduous task. Now, I get it, right? People have hardships. Some folks are barely getting by. But if you broke that out into a 2-year or a 3-year planning situation, right, that daily cost decreases. How bad do you want to go chase the magical wapiti?
That's what it boils down to. How bad do you want to do it? Is it just something you're talking about? Because it's just like everything else in life. If you look at it from a whole, damn, that's going to take a lot, or damn, that's impossible. But if you start breaking it down piece by piece, month by month, year, whatever, however far out you want to put it. I mean, let's face it, we can all afford to do any hunt we want by doing it that way.
Yep.
If we want to go chase bighorn sheep, or we want to go chase tar in New Zealand, whatever we want to do, it may not be 6 months from now when season starts. It may be a few years from now. That's okay too. Because you'll be able to experience that, and you worked harder to get it, and you'll appreciate it more.
Oh, heck yeah. So I'm a spreadsheet guy, man. I mean, even after doing this a few years now, like when I sat down with the buddies, you know, preparing last year's hunt, dude, I create a spreadsheet for everything. So I created a gear spreadsheet. I just built my bow, and for my new bow build, it was a spreadsheet of what I saw going into it, my arrows, my bow, all the components, everything, right? So I'm a firm believer in spreadsheeting that mess. Everything from, you know, what's it going to cost in terms of my travel, how much is my backpack food going to cost? Or are we in a base camp situation? What do we need in food for that? Are we splitting food if it's base camp situation? Do I need a stove, right, in my pack? Is my buddy bringing a stove, or does he not have a stove? Okay, that's an extra canister of fuel that he's going to have to carry. And so, dude, I spreadsheet absolutely everything. And it really, really does help with the entire planning process. I mean, everything from the tag to, you know, like I say, down to the snack. You gotta, if you want to get out there and you gotta maximize your dollar, you can't wing it, right? You gotta know what you're working with. You gotta know what's out in front of you. Cause the worst thing you could do is say, okay, I'm going on this hunt, and get out there and realize that you have $100 in your pocket, and you forgot something, or you have a blowout on the truck, and then your trailer tire blows out, right? Now you're looking at it going, and dudes get stranded. I met a guy last year, and they were from Wisconsin, dude. They drove all the way out. His buddy drove his truck. They drove a motorhome, towed a trailer, and he said it took them 6 days to get there with all the problems they had. And they refused to turn around, and he said, I probably should have. The day I met him, he had a blowout on his little UTV, and he was just like, holy crap. And luckily, I had the Jeep, I had some slime, some plugs, so we plugged him up and helped him out. But he was like, man, thanks, I don't know what I was going to do, because that's how they based their hunt. They didn't have packs. They based their hunt off of getting that UTV in some of those single tracks, and that was their pack out method and the whole 9, quarter by quarter type deal. So I think with the spreadsheets, man, it just helps itemize everything, and then it keeps your head in the game as you're going through that process.
There has to be a method to however you're going to do it. I personally don't use spreadsheets, and it's not because I'm against them. It's because I have such bad ADD. In my mind, it's just how my brain works. It takes too long for me to do that. I got other stuff to do. You know what I'm saying? Like, my brain is constantly running 100 miles an hour all day long. So I can't sit down. I don't have the patience to sit down and do that. And it's kind of a curse. But what I do, so like, let's just say meals, okay? I know I'm going in for 10 days. So we set up a base camp, and we will take a few days and day hunt. We'll spend a few nights, we'll head deep in the backcountry, hunt a few nights, whatever. We do it all. We don't, we're not subject to just this or just that. So for meals, I'll get 1 gallon or 2 gallon freezer bags, and in each bag, I'll plan out every day's meals in those bags so let's say I'm going for 10 days. I know I'm not going to spend all 10 realistically. If you're going on your first elk hunt, please do not plan for spending 10 nights in the backcountry.
Out of your backpack.
Yeah. Don't do that. You're setting yourself up for a very tough 10 days. And I'm not saying it can't be done. I'm just saying your best bet would be to get something set up or have a base camp you can come back to refresh. I mean, halfway through our trip every year, we take 1 day in the middle of the trip. We go into town. We get a good shower. We get a good meal. It refreshes and, regenerates us 100% to get back after it.
Physically and mentally.
Yes. Because by then, if you haven't been into elk, you are like, F this, I'm done. Your mind starts just rolling.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'll do is I'll say, okay, worst case scenario, I'll say I'm going to be away from base camp for 6 nights, 6 full days. So I will pack 2 or 3 bags, these Ziploc bags for a day hunt, right? So they'll just have, something to have with my morning coffee. So we typically would eat breakfast at camp. We make up a quick batch of eggs, and we have bacon to throw in there. We have bacon and eggs in the morning, maybe some tortillas, some wraps, or a peak refuel scramble, and we'll make tortillas out of that because it's a quick make, and you can make about 8 tacos out of that thing. So you can eat breakfast at camp and hit the trail, and I'll have my morning coffee pack for about 9 a.m. We'll stop, we'll have a snack, cup of coffee, and then we'll head on. I'll have my lunch, and then I know I'm coming back to camp that night, so I won't have another meal for dinner. On the flip side, and then I'll also have what I like to do is keep a pack of those Starburst chews, the little candies.
Mm-hmm.
I keep them in my stretch pouch of my pack because, listen, I understand there's a lot of hype around that. You got to have granola, and 3 days of eating that garbage will get to you. Period. Sometimes just having that 2 or 3 little Starburst candies are just amazing. But anyway, you do you. You pack how you want. You eat how you want. I could care less. I'm just saying it's truly helpful. I know a guy that packs gummy bears. I know a guy, just.
Mine's Swedish fish, buddy.
Oh, I love those things. Now that's probably going to go in my pack. I didn't even think to bring it. That might go in my pack.
I get the little, they sell the box of, actually I ordered the wrong one last year, but it's like a little single serve of them. And there's nice. There's 8 or 9 of them in the bag. So I do the same thing as I throw them in my little day to go. Last year I ordered a box of them off of Amazon, thinking that it was the small packs, and it was 50 of the full-size packs. I had Swedish fish I think I just finished them a couple months ago.
That's awesome. So I always have a Mountain Ops Ignite. Now, some people are like, well, the caffeine or whatever. For me, Mountain Ops was the only one that I could take that would last me at least 8 to 10 hours. When I take that stuff, I don't get this crazy, let's go, and then die out. The Mountain Ops for me, when I take that Ignite, I just carry those single packs. It lasts almost all day. So another thing I'll throw in there is maybe a B12 chew for that afternoon when I'm starting to really die out. Just throw that in and, But anyway, so my day hunt, I'll have a baggie, and it'll have my coffee pack in it. It'll have, sometimes it'll have those Jake's peanut butter packs or whatever they are on, and I'll just bring a half a bagel, and I'll just spread that peanut butter on it and eat that bagel with my coffee in the morning. My lunch will be, it could be those tuna packs. You can buy them for $1 at Walmart. There's unlimited. Whatever you like to eat. And then I always pack one meal in every bag, like a peak meal or a Sasquatch fuel or, any meal like that, one of them goes in my bag always. And it could be a lunch, it could be a breakfast, whatever. I always have something somewhere throughout the day. I don't want to eat a ton of them because, let's face it, those things really mess with your stomach days on end of eating them. Well, they do me. I don't know if they do everybody else, but
most folks, man.
Yeah. So if I'm packing overnight for a few days, then I have a tub and they've got these Ziploc bags. So I know I'm going to be there 2 days. Okay, I'll grab this bag and this bag because this bag has got a dinner in it as well. So it has an extra meal in it. So I know now I'm set for 2 days. Got plenty of food. I don't have to worry about it because I typically eat about 4,000 calories a day while I'm at home. So on the mountain, when I'm expending 10,000 calories hiking around, I need a good amount of food. Where some guys can eat a bar in the morning and go hike all day. I would die.
I'm actually really happy that you brought that up, right? And that's one of the things that I don't think guys realize is the amount of caloric expenditure on the mountain. And when your calories are down, your mental starts to suffer. When that mental starts to suffer, everything just starts to go, right? Because you're already beating the hell out of your body. And then when you start feeling it, man, because, I know guys that are packing 2,800 calories for a day, and I'm like, that ain't near enough calories. Your output is, in my head, right, depending on how you're hunting. But if you're moving all day in some of that country, you're at bare minimum of 6,000.
Yeah.
And dudes don't replace it. And man, what a detriment. And then the fats are too low, right? And with the fat part of that, right? And I'm not going to try and get all nutritionist, but the fats really help sustain that mental well-being. And that is a huge plus when you're getting your ass kicked.
Absolutely. Because, you get the sugary stuff. Yeah, it might give you a jolt now, but you're going to crash and burn. That stuff burns quick.
Really
quick. I learned that the first year that we went on our own. I cut my meals down because I didn't eat as much the first year I actually elk hunted. So the second year I went, we had it all mapped out. This area looked really good on the map. It looked like an easy hike between we fall and drop into this canyon. We'd be in the canyon. We could roll it right out this meadow. There's a spring in this meadow. And I'm like, it was awesome. So we thought. It was the most treacherous hike I've ever been on in my life. And it ended up being about 5 p.m. We went through all our food. And my old man cooking his meal for lunch spilled 2 full cups of water. So he was already down water. Now at 11 o'clock in the morning, we stopped for lunch. And we continued hiking. So we were out of water and out of food by like 5 o'clock. And it was 80 degrees. And we were 7 miles from the truck, and we had some treacherous terrain. Now, it may not sound bad to you, but from a guy from Indiana whose most calorie expenditure in a day is probably 2,500 calories, that's huge.
Mm-hmm. That's huge. Elk country, man, that's huge for anyone, right? With that kind of country again, and there's guys that can handle it, but those guys that can handle it, even the seasoned guys, they're not out there with minimal calories. I mean, those guys are dumping calories.
Yeah, and that was the thing. So I had never. This was all new to me, and so we're halfway out, and when I say this 100%, my legs couldn't hold up my body. I had nothing left, and my old man was falling down. I'd be walking and my legs are just gone, and I'd hit the dirt. And finally, I fell out, and I couldn't stand back up. My buddy had to come lift me. My brain was telling my legs to move, and my legs weren't moving. Like, I was that bad off. And I thought I was going to have to hit the SOS button. And I was able to, I can hear running water in the distance. I'm like, we got to get to that water, period, the end. There's no other option. So we made it through it. We get down in the water, and little did we know it was a straight cliff. Like, the water was along the road. So that's what we were shooting for. And it was a cliff up to the road. There was no way to get to the road. And so we had to wade this river. And I mean, it was like 1.5 miles to 2 miles up this river, and we could not get a spot to get to the road. But anyway, we get back to camp, and my buddy's sitting there, and my old man's like, I'm going to bed. I said, no, you're not. You're going to eat. he's like, I can't eat. I said, you're going to eat. Mm-hmm. You have to replenish these calories. You're going to wake up in the morning. You're not going to move if you wake up at all. So I'm like, you need to sit down. You need to eat a meal, drink a protein shake. I don't care what you do. Just put something in your body. He's like, all right. So he sat down. He ate. I ate a full meal, and then I had a protein shake on top of it. Because I'll bring packs of protein for protein shakes. Because I think for me, that's one of my biggest replenishments. And it helps me the next morning when I wake up. Like, I'm giving back to my body while I sleep, right? So, and my old man made these homemade power pack with all these superfoods. He made these protein bags. And, so he ate that. And my buddy sitting next to me says, hey, he says, you're not going to believe how many calories we burned today. And it was 10,800 calories on his watch is what he burned. And I was like, that's got to be wrong. Like, you can't burn 10,000 in my mind. You can't burn 10,000 calories in a day. Never even heard of that. But apparently that happens a lot.
Oh yeah, it's absolutely doable.
I was not prepared. I had like 1,800 calories worth of food in my bag. You know what I mean? Like I was super unprepared for that. Now, on the flip side, don't pack your bags full of so much food. You know, it's not necessary. It's not always going to happen that way. Just know that, have a plan and make sure you're prepared that if something goes bad, that you have a little extra, you know, whether it be a protein bar or something that can really snap in and get you where you need to go.
Yeah. So the way that we do it, right, is well, okay. So last year the plan was to pack in and live out of our backs for a few days. Unless there was something that triggered something else. And we get in the day before season, the elk are bugling right there around camp, right? Or where we had set up, parked. So I said, well, crap, guys, let's go ahead and put 2 to 3 days of provisions in our bags. And as we set out tomorrow, we'll figure it out, right? But the plan is to, you know, not pass by elk to hunt elk or hear it all the time. So we actually, you know, we carried a couple, 3 days for the first few days. There was 2 or 3 days of provisions in our packs. And last year was cake because we were within a couple miles at any given moment of where we ended up setting up base camp. So then it was like, okay, we can pull this stuff out because the elk are here. We just gotta kill one. It's the killing part of it, right? Yeah. And I always carry my day's food plus an extra day. So the extra day of food is in, you know, it's in a Ziploc where I've actually used the vacuum seal, and that's in a green, like Walmart waterproof bag, right? The little fold up clippy ones. And I just keep that in there because you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know if you're going to, you know, arrow that bull and you're out there until, you know, midnight. So I always have that backup food. Even, you know, like I carry the Sasquatch, and there's a breakfast that Andrew has, and that one I just, you know, cold water it if I have to, but it's in there because I don't want to carry the little stove or whatnot, you know, the jet boil. I hate even saying I use jet boil, but it's so convenient. They hate us. But I always have at least a day extra of food, plus random snacks, right? Some kind of, I like those Nature's Bakery bars. You get the big giant box at Costco, and I keep those in the lid of my pack so that way I could just reach in and grab a bar on the fly. But I agree with you, having something that's easily digested, like a protein powder. For me, I use the First Form stuff. That's money, man. I mean, just to help with the repair, the additional protein, kind of keep you in that protein synthesis as you're beating the hell out of the muscle, is huge. So I would say at least 2 days of food provisions. And then you got to remember, right? And I did it to myself this year where, you know, I don't know how many days we're in. We're a few days in and I got lazy, didn't repack, or replenish the pack from the day prior, left base camp, not even realizing that I didn't replenish my food, and had lightened up the load, pulled a bunch of stuff out. Well, we sit down to eat, and it's, freaking midday, and I go in my pack. As soon as I stuck my hand in my pack, I go, son of a gun. I didn't replenish, my food. I screwed myself because, that's just something I had to do. And then I pulled that extra day provision out, trying to lighten the load, and didn't put anything back in there. And man, that sucked. And then you're looking around, your buddies are grubbing. And for me, it was just like, well, I'm not going to ask for your calories because I pulled a bonehead move. Now I'm going to ask you to risk your well-being and your hunt because I screwed up. So I just, I'm the dude that'll suffer through it. And, Caesar hands me this nut butter stuff. I don't know if you ever seen them it's sort of like what the runners and bikers use, and it's just like basically liquid nut energy. Dude, that shit is so nasty. I opened the pack. That stuff hit my hand when I opened the pack because I squeezed it. I about threw up when I saw it on my hand.
That's awesome.
It was absolutely horrible. So I had to suffer through it. But it was a lesson, right? Like, hey dummy, why did you pull that out? You do that because you've been in positions before where you ran out of food, and now, you put yourself back there. And like I say, luckily we were, a couple miles away from base, but staying up on that is huge, 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 huge.
Yeah. One thing, like you said, it kind of brings up a point is if you're at the end of your day and you're almost out of food and you are gassed beyond belief, I don't know, maybe the weather got hotter than you expected or whatever, and all you have left is a dry cracker bar, you are going to hate your life. I'm just going to throw that out there. I know that stuff's good for you, but for me, when I'm gassed beyond belief, the last thing I want is something dry and crunchy. You know what I mean? Like I know it's food and I know it's going to give me the proper nutrition I need. I can't do it. I mean, I will if that's what I have, but so when you're packing your meals, make sure it's stuff that you like. It's got to be something that's going to give you what you need to get through the day, but don't pack your pack full of trail mixes and granola bars and nut mixes and some healthy nut butters. Like, get a variety so you're not eating the same shit every day because, you can, and you'll get through it just fine. A lot of guys who eat two of the same foods, and they live off that the whole week. And, there's a lot of guys that do a lot of cool shit that I wish I had the mental toughness for. I just don't do it.
Make sure it's something that if you're packing a lunchbox, right? If you're a blue collar guy and you're packing your lunchbox, it's got to be something that you would pack in your lunchbox on a day-to-day basis, going to the 9 to 5. If you can't eat it like that, then don't take it into the Elkwoods. And
one thing I do take with me too, for the same reason. I bring those. I used to bring the little Kool-Aid. It was a little like the squeezable Kool-Aid you put in a water bottle. Mm-hmm. I would bring one of those in my pack because 3 or 4 days of just drinking water. And what I would do is just drop 2 drops in with my lunch. So I had a nice, bottle of Kool-Aid for lunch with it wouldn't be overdosed with sugar like your normal, but it would just change the flavor. So what I started doing was bringing those Noon electrolyte tablets.
I love those.
Yeah, drop 2 of them in your Nalgene and rock and roll. Now you've got electrolytes to keep you rocking. Like, those are a game changer for me. I love those things.
Well, we haven't even gone down the water road and how important that is, talking about the meals.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then, going back to the planning for the hunt, right? So, prepare. Again, for me, it's a spreadsheet. For Derek, it's not. It might just be a list of things going to the store. But prepare. You got to plan for your meals. If you're out there for 7 days, right? If a guy gets 7 days and you figure you're gonna double to triple your normal caloric intake, you're not shopping for 7 days on an everyday basis, you're shopping for 14 days, depending on that expenditure, the caloric expenditure. So, shop heavy, but write it down and plan each day. For me, I label it, right? Here's Monday breakfast. I go crazy with the damn vacuum seal, but here's Monday AM and then the Monday PM bag. And depending on how that hunt is playing out, right, I'm going to either have AM and PM in my pack, or I'm just going to have AM plus my extra and then PM sitting in the back of the truck, waiting for me to get back to base camp. But, back to what I said, I'm a spreadsheet guy. So the meals are absolutely mapped out. I would say my quick suggestions to have in there is like some type of peanut butter, squeezable peanut butter packets. I love honey on the mountain. It's really good, quick energy. It doesn't treat me horrible. But it has some huge, carbohydrate benefits, right, in terms of that fast delivered energy. And I love it. I'll have a little bit on a Nature's Bakery bar. Those are great. And then whatever type of protein powder you like to drink. I carry a little, I believe that's a 16-ounce Nalgene that I'll mix proteins and some of the electrolyte type drinks in off the side. You got anything and quick references for meals or snacks on the mountain that have helped you?
The thing that I do like, because it's a high calorie and it's small, lightweight, are those honey stinger waffles. Mm-hmm. I love those things because they're small, and they pack a meat. They're loaded with calories and things, and they're just good. They're good for you, and you need the calories. And what I like to bring is, you can get them at the stores, the little Nutella packs. It's the Nutella with little breadsticks in them. Right. So you get a little bit of Nutella and that chocolate Nutella is pretty delicious when you're out on the mountain. And I never even had Nutella until last year, so that was new for me, and that was definitely a bonus.
And you bring up a good point, right? Is calorically dense, right? As you want, because there's a trade-off there. As you're loading, 6, 7, 8,000 calories into a Ziploc, you want things that are calorically dense. And then if you're getting your typical air quote Walmart snacks, right, from the snack aisle, that's pack weight, and a lot of that stuff can get really, really heavy. So calorically dense foods is a big deal.
And that's typically why either my breakfast or my lunch is one of those meals, because the meals typically are a 2-person meal, right? Each bag is serving for 2, and some of them are heavy and they're hard to eat. So you have to make sure that you're getting something that, you're expending a lot of calories. It might be warm. Make sure it's a lighter meal, but they pack a ton of calories. They got good fats. They're high in sodium, which you need. I mean, they're just, it's the biggest, nutritional thing that you can put in your body. And they don't weigh anything.
Most of them are sitting, I'm going to say, between 1,200 and 1,600 calories in a bag. I mean, that's a lot. Yeah. It doesn't sound like a lot when we're talking about, caloric expenditure being, 7 to 10,000 calories in a day. But when you sit down to consume one of those, it's a whole lot, man. And then for me, at least, you have to look at your output versus that input, especially when you start talking the really high sodium stuff. Last year, the year before, when the guys in camp, he was, just scarfing one night, man, just starving, right? I think he ate like a Peak and a Mountain House. And I'm like, dude, you better watch. That sodium is so high. And I remember he climbed up in his, he had one of the rooftop tents, Tony, and he climbed in there and he jumped out a little while later. And man, I shit you not, his arms, like his forearms and his hands were, it looked like he got eaten alive by like hornets or something got him. They were they were swollen from the sodium, just gelatinous looking. So you really have to watch And some guys, I mean, not all of us are spring chickens, right?
Yeah.
You really got to watch that sodium intake with the output and how much water you're drinking.
Yeah, absolutely.
With all that.
A lot of them are high in sodium because that's what you need because of your expenditure and what you're bringing in. But yeah, that is a good point. You got to make sure you're not eating too much.
And then, I mean, if you look at, like Peak, man, they have some really tasty meals, right? High in calories.
Yeah.
And there's, they're up there in the sodium, and you look on the other side of that with something like Sasquatch, where the sodium is controllable to the point, right? Because most of the sodium in Sasquatch comes from the jerky, which is basically a supplemental pack that's in the pack. So you can actually watch, how much of that you're taking into, because
I absolutely love his meals. My two favorites are Peak and Sasquatch.
Mm-hmm.
Like those are my go-tos all the time.
I can't eat anything else. If I eat some of the other brands, dude, it's like what bear was in camp while we were asleep. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It is not, that shit is not pretty, man. And then, so what do you think in terms of water, right? Because there's a ton of different filtration. Understanding what you have the best you can, right? In this scenario, right? A lot of guys don't have the opportunity to go out and get a scout in, or this is their first year. So water is a huge risk. I know for me, I don't like to travel. If I'm going somewhere where I know they don't have water or doesn't have water, spring or creek or something, then I got to bring water with. But I don't like to travel. That's a lot of weight. You figure 8.2 or 8.4 pounds per gallon. You should be drinking at bare minimum. You should be drinking a gallon a day, plus whatever you're using for your meals, plus if you're drinking coffee. So you need a shit ton of water out on the mountain. So what are you doing? How do you supplement that water? Are you filtering everything? You taking water with? How's that look?
So before we leave, we go to, the first year I went to, we've got a grocery store down the road. I went in there and I bought those 5-gallon or 20-gallon jugs, like they go in the water dispenser jugs.
Mm-hmm.
I bought 5 of them for the 10 days for in-camp water. So every morning we'd fill up our bladders in that. And so we'd have our bladder water. And I'd fill up my Nalgene in the morning with 1 Ignite. So my morning drink is my Ignite. As I'm hiking, I'm drinking the Ignite. So now we just fill those up with the hose water. So we have cooking water at camp, and we fill the bladder. Like I always fill up after that day that we did that 10,800 calories, and everywhere where they showed water on the map was dried up. I will not bring extra water with me, and it does weigh a little more. But I always pack my Sawyer squeeze, the micro squeeze. I always pack that. I know a lot of guys are against it, or they're like, nah, I don't like that. It takes too long to filter water. Or they use something a little like a Catadine or something a little more complex. Or some guys just use a Steripen, right? Or aqua tablets. Whatever works, whatever you like to do. Whatever gets the job done, right? For me, the micro squeeze doesn't weigh anything. You could strap it on your water bottle, or you can hook it in line with your bladder, whatever you want to do. And I keep that with me, but typically I rarely finish my whole bladder. I usually get about 3/4 of the way done. If it's hot out, I will, but if it's 50s, anywhere between 60s and below, I'll drink my Ignite that I've poured from camp water if it's a day hunt or I'm just heading out. And then, I may fill it up 2, maybe 3 more times throughout the day, and I'll still have a quarter. And I only use a 2 liter. A buddy of mine uses a 3. That's the extra weight. I don't know. I feel like I could find water if necessary, if I had to. But that's kind of how I look at it. The added water that we bring with, it's just a luxury. It's not necessary. It's just something that, like, I always bring a pack of steaks. Every year I bring a pack of steaks for that, like, day 3 or 4 when you're like, and you just want something good, a good protein packed meal, like I will have a pack of steaks for whether it's venison steaks or I'll buy steaks at the store. We'll have something just as like a treat, right? Something nice. Like if you haven't noticed, there's a pattern here. I like to do a lot of things that are like candy or whatever. I like to enjoy myself, right? I still go without a lot. I just like to have a few things here and there.
But it's a big deal, right? When you get out there and you go, okay, if you have that mindset of I'm that backcountry guy and I'm going to only have this bar and this trail mix and these dehydrated meals. And then you realize the ass kicking that you're actually going to take, and that stuff starts to become super monotonous, right? And it doesn't help the mental state.
Once, and it's typically too late when you're already in the hunt 5 days and you're like, man, I really wish I would have packed something different.
Yeah, it sucks. I mean, it's shit, dude. There was one year I went and I had Sasquatch Fuel mac and cheese. That was it. That was my dinner every single night, right? Fucking mistake. You know, it was just like, oh my God, what did I do? And then I did bagels. And the bagels, and that's the thing, like bagels are great. The problem is I did bagels with cured bacon and peanut butter, and then we would take honey packs and we would put that on there. Well, everything was vacuum sealed because bagels are volume, right? Because they're so airy. So I vacuum sealed them. As I'm vacuum sealing, I'm kind of pressing them down, get some of that air out so they just get real streamlined. Dude, try and eat a bagel that way, and it sucks day one. You do that for 4 days, and I would take everything and eat it off the bagel, and then I would just feed the birds, man. I'd huck that damn. I couldn't eat it. I think that's the year my boy went, so I did 2 of those a day for each of us. We had planned 16 days, so we had 32 bagels. I think we made it through 7 of them, and it was just like, F these things. They were, dude, everything just gets so monotonous, right? It's like, screw, to me, that's the biggest thing. Have some flippin' variety. Yep. You gotta have that variety. I remember we were getting our butts kicked, and I was like, okay, we're going to peel down. We're going to go down. We're going to just have part of the day in town. So I think we hunted the morning, and it was pretty quiet in the afternoon. So I said, all right, let's go. We went up back to camp and then, drove down to town, which is not an easy drive. And we went to the grocery store and grabbed a few things, just some pick-me-up stuff, and there's one diner in that entire town. And went into that diner and sat down and ordered a pizza. My boy got a burger. I got a burger. He got onion rings. I got crisp cut fries. I want to say we got like mozzarella sticks and some jalapeno poppers. Dude, we left and everything was devoured. Absolutely devoured. But when we were there, I was like, we got to get some food. So we went to a little, general store, and I think they had just regular old, white bread. Like, it wasn't Wonder Bread, but, might as well have been like Blue Label bread, some mayonnaise. We got some hot dogs and something else we had got. I don't remember. Anywho, we were up in camp and we're making this, and I would cook and my boy would plate everything. So, I was just like, man, I need to up my fats. My mental's bad. And I just enjoy that, the sensation that extra fat content provides. And he goes, you want mayonnaise on both sides? And I'm like, yeah, hook it up. So he's plating everything and he brings it over to me, and I go to pick up the sandwich and I my hand's in mayonnaise, and I'm like, why the hell? I said, you put the freaking bread on here backwards. And he's like, what do you mean? I go, well, you got the mayonnaise on the outside. And he goes, well, I asked you if you wanted mayonnaise on both sides of the bread. So that's where you're at mentally, right? So this dude takes both slices of bread, on my hot dog sandwich. I think we had eggs on it too, and he mayonnaised all four sides. Both insides, both outside. I shit you not, man. That was the best mountain sandwich I've had ever. I was like, damn, this isn't bad. Mayonnaise dripping all over my fingers and shit. It was, oh man, it was hilarious. But the pick me up when you do stuff like that, back to the point, the pick me up is absolutely wonderful. Dude, our moods were better. The next day we were gung ho again and just ready to go. I mean, the food, I can't put enough emphasis on really looking at planning those meals and really setting out to provide yourself good calories, but also a good mindset, right? We tend to use food as comfort, and we forget about that when we go out on these trips. And I think it's hugely important to have that little bit of comfort.
The biggest thing is overall, go enjoy yourself. Don't be too hard on yourself. Mm-hmm. The bottom line is you're going into unknown country, unknown everything. And a lot of the guys that are like, this is what I take, this is what I do. These guys have been doing it for years, and they know what they like. They know what their bodies handle. And they know, what their mental is like.
Right.
For a lot of us from the East heading west, we don't know any of that. So for us to eat what these guys are saying, yeah, you should probably take this, eat that. It's great advice, and all those foods are good for you. But if that's not stuff that you're used to, and that's not a constant thing that you've experienced, you're going to find misery. And so, yes, those things should be in your pack, and yes, you need to eat them, but enjoy yourself, because especially if it's your first trip, you're going to put yourself through misery, and the more times you do that yourself, the less likely you are to go back, and the less likely you are to enjoy those experiences. You're going to hate everything about it. You're going to hate the fact that you're not going to understand why people do it, because you just have to understand there are levels to the types. Like me, I'm not an extreme elk hunter. I love elk hunting. It consumes most of my year, but most of the guys that I know are hardcore, and things are broken down very precise, and like you said earlier, based on caloric intake only. They don't think about, I want to have these nice things, and these, they just eat this dry stuff that just gets them through the day. I mean, think about like Aaron Snyder. That guy eats like nothing throughout, you know what I mean? Like he'll pack minimal stuff. He talks about it. It's like, personally, I'm just a wuss, apparently. But I'm just saying, if you're going to go into something new, don't make it extreme. Mm-hmm. Go in there with an open mind. If you don't kill an elk, you don't kill an elk. You don't kill mule deer. You don't kill whatever you're going for. Enjoy it. I know you're putting a lot of money into this, and for some of you it might be a one and done because it's all you can afford, so you want to make sure you tag out. I'm just going to drop a truth bomb. It's more than likely not going to happen.
Right.
I mean, it's just the way it is. You have to learn these animals live on their own terms. They live by survival, and we live in comfort. So for us to just go out in their backyard and in their domain and try to, I mean, I'm not saying you're not going to kill an elk your first hunt, but just be realistic and enjoy yourself.
Right. So
take it all in.
I'm not even sure how we got back on the food that fast, and we were talking about water. And one of the things that you had said was that, the Sawyer Mini, with the inline, and my only recommendation to that would be, if you're going to use a filter with your bladder, make sure that you have another bladder, right? You don't want to, get creek water or
at least an algae.
Yeah, stagnant water, and then go and reuse that thing. You run the risk of those virus, bacteria, protozoa, whatever, getting into your clean water source. So just watch that. And then some, like for me, so I carry that Sawyer Mini. And yeah, sometimes, right, you sit there and you got a creek that has a very low flow. It's a little harder to fill up. So I like the Sawyer, the S3. That thing is, dude, it is. I was drinking out of Pissy Wallow and had no odor, nothing. I mean, that thing is phenomenal. Heavy metals, pesticides, odor. That S3, it's a little pricey. I think it's $100, $105 or something like that. But man, it is, to me, that's my go-to water filtration. It's super easy. You fill it up, you close it, squeeze it 10 times, and you're good to go. Not doing anything but that. So that's my recommendation in terms of the water filtration. I don't trust the SteriPens. I've never done them. I just, and guys use them. My buddy was using them. He was using it last year, with success, but, it just worries me. And then the smell, right? I mean, some of that water is stagnant, and that's the one thing, with like a SteriPen or some of the other stuff is it doesn't get rid of the odor. And then it makes it hard to palate.
You drop those in there, you're still drinking pissy water. It's just not going to kill you.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that, the palatability of the water, especially to sit there and, feel refreshed is a big deal for me. So I like that S3. Trying to think, man, what, I guess part of it too is that we sort of touched on it, but we didn't, is what type of hunt are you looking for, right? Are you looking to go out and be an elk and try and figure them out? And yes, you want to ultimately kill, an animal, but there's so many aspects, there's so many ways that you could attack it, right? You can base camp it, you can spike out, you could truck camp, or you can, you could do your truck mobile or boot mobile type camps, where you're kind of chasing those animals down. You guys are basing, or are you looking to all of it?
So we always set up a base camp, always. I know a lot of guys don't because they like to remain completely mobile. But we always have a base camp, and in the morning, we're willing to drive 45 minutes in the morning to get to our spot. You know what I'm saying? Like, so if we're day hunting, then we'll just hunt directly from camp. But typically we'll take a few days and we'll just hunt from our packs. We'll just drop camp wherever we stop for the evening, and that's it. We haven't really done any spike camping, just because we haven't gotten far enough back where it's like 7 miles, or where we can drop a spike camp and then hunt another 4 miles from, you know what I'm saying? Like, we've never had to. I guess a lot of places are like, get away from everybody, and they're all, you got to go miles deep. Sometimes you don't have to. Sometimes there's pockets within, and that's something that I learned from Jonathan Metcalf was, we were burying it. We were going here and there. And he's like, look, dude, he's like, think about this. Think about how many people hit that trailhead and go all the way. He said, but there may be spots by the trailhead that are only a mile or a half mile, or not even, might be a pocket that's holding a bull, or there might, so he opened up a lot of my eyes to a lot of that as well, where things I weren't thinking of, like I'd hit the trailhead, head down, let's roll, where honestly, 2 or 3 times once I talking to him, we broke it down. I was getting in, like you talked earlier too, you were getting into elk close to camp. Like, sometimes you're walking right by the elk. And after my first year hunting, that was something I was talking with Michael Batiste about. I was like, hey, there's got to be more to this. I don't know how many times I'm walking through the fresh snow and there's bull tracks going this way or that way, and I'm running past all this sign, and we're just going. I'm like, I feel like I'm passing up elk. I feel like I'm passing up elk to go find elk. Yep. And maybe that's just me because I'm inexperienced. I go, but this is kind of my thought process. He's like, no, you're right. He said, there's elk all over, but you got to find them. So just remember, sometimes you don't have to go 10 miles in to find elk. Sometimes they're, even in heavily hunted areas, sometimes they're
right
half mile. It might be a abstract way to get into somewhere, and people just start looking at it because it's kind of a pain in the butt, but
Well, I think
you never know.
a lot of that too lends itself to, what we hear and what we see, and, getting that, nobody can see it, but the bunny ears there, air quote, backcountry experience.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, if you drove, our drive is, 45 minutes on a dirt county divide road, then another 45 minutes on basically a single track barely wide enough for the vehicles. I mean, it's backcountry. When you look at a lot of those areas, we're pretty heavily roaded. I don't care, especially if you're looking at, most of these states, you're pretty heavily roaded. You might, from one road to the other, might be 13, 14 miles as the crow flies.
Yeah.
You go 6 miles, you know what I mean? You're closer to the other road than you're. Yeah. So, it really, I think a lot of that lends itself to what people are hearing and seeing in terms of, backcountry. Do you want to, and then you don't even talk about packing that thing out. 6, 7 miles with a nice mule deer buck on you is torture in that type of distance. You imagine having to make 4 or 5 trips, meat, head and horns, and whatever else is in your pack, over 4 to 6 miles. I mean, you're talking, 20, 30 miles, depending on, you said you guys were hunting, it was 80 degrees. What about your meat? Having your plan, fit, not just how you see it, but what you're capable of, and how are you going to get that meat without spoiling, or you don't want to walk back 6 miles, make 2 trips, and then start considering leaving whatever else is left down there and be that guy, right? Because you weren't truthful about how far in you should be going. You said it earlier, right? You start looking at those maps, and if you're not a guy that reads a lot of contours, or understands, shaded relief maps and things like that, you look at it and it's like, oh man, I could do that all day. And you get to that country and you drop down, you get to that first park or that first meadow, and you look back to where you came, and the 150-foot pine that you were, you could tell you were parked right there, looks like it's about 2.5 inches tall. You got to go back up there with, 80-pound quarter, 60-pound quarter strapped to you a few times. So, tempering, tempering your ego is a big deal when you step off into the elk woods.
Yeah, absolutely.
Shouldn't be a deterrent, though. I don't want to deter anybody. I just, just be realistic about your expectation and your approach, especially if it's something that this is your first time undertaking it. I would say first time, I absolutely agree with you, man, is have that base camp situated. I don't want a 6-hour setup on a base camp. That locked us in one year where it wasn't 6 hours, but you get this big ass elaborate setup, right? Where it's, 4 or 5 hours, everything is set up. Who the hell wants to take that down and redo it again?
Right. And typically we just throw up our canvas tent, which doesn't take too long. With a couple of guys, it's up within 20 minutes. Mm-hmm. And then we throw up one card table for like this. We got two card tables for the stove, and then the other one is for just like throwing gear out, organizing things. That's it. That is our camp setup. We don't have anything elaborate, nothing crazy. We don't have extra canopies and shit everywhere. It's just the tent and a couple tables. That way, like you said, if you got to get up and go, you don't have to worry about wasting a half a day getting camp rolled up and getting out of there. Yeah,
because that shit will lock you down, because you'll look at all that and go, nah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then fitting it.
Yeah.
You had to strategically pack the vehicles, man. If you're up and moving, you're trying to throw that shit in there and roll.
Yeah. That was the first year I went, we had all that stuff set up. We had tent, we had canopy for the food, we actually had a shelter built with a roof for the bathroom.
Nice.
It was perfect. But if we ever had to move from there, it would have been quite the chore. It would have taken us some time getting out of there and So that's something that we don't typically do. We typically try to stay as mobile as possible at all times. But, usually we start off like this past year, our first day, we dumped into the elk woods and we stayed 2 days. We didn't come back out right off the bat. Typically we would go out for a day hunt just to get acclimated. You don't want to push yourself too hard, especially if you're coming from somewhere where you're not used to altitude.
Right.
Get out there a day early and just setting up camp. You're going to be out of breath. You're going to be tired. You're going to be winded, probably lightheaded. Things like this happen, especially at 8,000, 10,000 feet when you're coming from below sea level. So don't plan to get there, throw on your pack and run and gun. You may be able to do it. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying get there, get acclimated, get things set up. Make sure everything's your bow's shooting right. We typically spend the first day just getting things set up. This year, we got everything set up. I had to sit down after getting the tent set up because I got lightheaded because the altitude it'll do that. So I sat down, had some water, ate a little bit of something and just relaxed for a minute and then got back after pretty slow. And then after about 2 hours, 3 hours, I was good. And we dove off the mountain and we hunted. We actually hunted that evening, but I would say if you're going and you're traveling a good distance, you need to acclimate yourself. If you're flying, even more so. If you're flying, you dump yourself into 8,000 to 10,000 feet and you plan on hunting that day. Don't. Do yourself a favor. Get acclimated. Let your body, get used to that because you will know immediately that you messed up if you go diving off trying to climb mountains and it's your first day there. Driving, at least you're getting acclimated as you go. It's still, especially if you're going to Colorado because you're still at like below 5,000 feet all the way to Denver. You know what I mean? And once you get into Denver, now you start climbing and then you go jumping somewhere and it's just a recipe for disaster. So make sure that, when you get there, you just take it easy. But first, if you want to go balls to the wall day 2, that's up to you. But I would say the day that you arrive, man, just, pay attention to what your body's telling you.
Have you flown in on any or you've drove to your...
I've only drove, and for that reason. That's the sole reason I won't fly is just so when my first trip there driving in, I hit the first, I don't remember the passes, what they're called, but the first pass I hit was like 11,002 right out the box. And I dropped off that pass and we get into these pastures where there's a bunch of ranches and they had some antelope, a big group of antelope. I'm like, oh, cool. So I pull over to take some pictures. I jump out of the truck and I felt like I drank a case of beer. Like I couldn't hold myself up. I was holding the bed rail. I'm like, oh man. So I got back in the truck and I laid back 45 minutes on the side of the highway. I am laid back like with my eyes closed. I couldn't catch my bearings.
No shit.
And I start going. I get in the next pass. Same thing. Coming down. Boom. It hit me again. I pulled into the truck stop. I got some fuel and I just sat there for a half hour. My saving grace for that was I was staying at somebody's house that day, coming in, and he lives at like 7,500 feet. So that whole afternoon and evening, I was, my body was getting acclimated to that because our camp was at like 9,500. Mm-hmm. I was scared to death, man. I told them guys, I was like, 9,500. So I was having some trouble at altitude and I was freaking out because all the podcasts talk about altitude sickness and all that stuff. And I'm like, man, they're like, just take it easy. So we got to camp and just setting up camp. I was gassed, man. I was tired, but it took a day. Even hiking, I was out of breath, having a hard time, but I didn't overdo it. Didn't push myself. I just listened to my body. And, now I don't have that problem. I go out there and my body acclimates fairly quickly and everything's good. But I couldn't imagine flying in and then being at 10,000 feet and going and doing I just feel like that's not a smart move for me.
Right. And guys, don't think that because you're flying in at 30,000 that you're getting the same effect, right? It's a pressurized cabin, so you don't.
Yeah, the cabin's helping you out.
you don't acclimate in the airplane. That just seems like a whole. I never even consider. I don't like flying anyway. And then now, given what you have to deal with flying and all the damn mask and all that, man, I'm a driver, and I enjoy. For me, I enjoy the road trip part of it, man. It's
absolutely.
That's enjoyable to me. And then you have...
especially if you're traveling with buddies, right?
Well, shit, I did, let's see. 2018, I was solo. 2019 was my boy. And then last year, Caesar drove up with me. He went back with Drew, but I flew my wife into Montrose, went down the mountain, picked her up. She spent 6 days on the mountain with me. So that was 16 days to that point. She had to get back to work. So I drove her home, stayed home a couple of days, and was talking out there because the weather had turned to shit. I was like 40, 50 mile an hour winds. So I was getting reports from the unit. And once the wind died, I drove back out solo, hunted, and then came back. So that was a lot of damn trips, man.
Yeah.
But the hardest part was the last one coming back. That was brutal. It's an 18-hour drive just at speed limit. But something about where we cut through Utah to get to Colorado, man, when you turn off that 15, dude, it is like a lifetime of road miles.
That's how, honestly, going through Nebraska, that's how it is, man. It's a very long state to travel through.
It's some of those road miles are brutal. I'm not, I am complaining, but I'll be there this year. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Happy to do it again. But that's another thing. I mean, in terms of planning and preparation, are you a guy that can sustain 12 hours on the road straight? Are you going to have to pull over and catch some shut eye? For me, I can do about 18 hours safely. And just, and not have a problem, not start dozing, none of that stuff. But that's my absolute max. I don't even like to push it that far. And that's on the way out. On the way back, I'm lucky to be able to pull 10 without needing some sleep, right? And then to me, for me, it's mapping out if I know I'm going to have to sleep, where is a viable place to sleep if I'm going to sleep in the truck for a few hours. Is there a place?
That's another thing. Those of you concerned about that's how I saved money in my first year. Truck stops, rest areas.
Mm-hmm.
Slept with a pistol in my lap. Got 4 hours of sleep overnight, and hit it and get it. And I never paid for a hotel room. I packed a cooler with some peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and a couple of sodas and whatever,
Mm-hmm.
just to spend as little money as because when my first elk hunt, I didn't have hardly any money. I was making like $50,000 a year, and I didn't have a lot of money. So I had to save money where I could. So I knew no hotels. That was out of the question. And I allowed myself one restaurant stop on the way there and one restaurant stop on the way back, just to break the monotony of eating. Because I knew, especially on the way back, after eating out of my pack, I'd like to have a nice meal on my way home.
Right.
So I allowed myself one meal there, one meal back, and then, I packed a cooler for the other stuff.
And then, part of that for me, like with the drive is finding out where the truck stops are at, right? And that's it's a good place to catch some shut eye, but then you could take a shower. So, I think I want to say most of them are around the $5 range to go get a nice hot shower. And they're, for the most part, man, those places are kept so well. They're clean. Yeah. Going in there and getting a $5 shower and getting, especially on the way back, right? When you've been out there sweating and nasty for days and days and days. That hot shower, man, that is money, dude. Absolute money. What do you think in terms of gear, right? Because that's where I hear a lot of guys going, man, I don't think that I can go do this. And for me, like I return to, if you can get out there and you're safe to be out there, just go out there, right? There is gear that is going to make us more comfortable. It's going to help us when shit turns, right? Because that's the one thing up at some of those elevations that time of year is the weather is all over the place. It go from 90 one day and then 2 days later, you're getting dumped on with snow. But I don't want gear to be the reason that guys do not go out and experience that if that's something that they're looking at doing. What do you think in terms of gear? Absolutely essential to have to get out into the elk woods.
So I think if you're heading out, the two things you absolutely need are a decent pack, and it doesn't have to be a $600 pack, just something that you know just from review, whatever, however you research, and it's comfortable on your back that can haul meat.
Mm-hmm.
So it's got to be a comfortable pack and a good set of boots. Make sure that you test both out. Make sure that you hike with them before going. Make sure you use them before you go. Don't take a new pack or new boots you've never worn because you might find yourself in misery. I think those two are the most important, no matter what. I'm telling you, like I said before, your whitetail hunting stuff will work. It will get the job done. As far as a solid hiking boot, I think is necessary just because of the terrain.
Yeah.
You don't need a sprained ankle or a broken leg or some crap because you wore cheap boots. Like, I really believe a good set of boots and a good pack are like your base, and a good set of rain gear.
Mm-hmm.
After that, like, you can piece your gear together all you want. I went to garage sales. I got my backpacking tent was a Eureka. It was like 4 pounds, 5 pounds, something like that. It was a little heavier. It was a little 2-person tent. It packed down real small, but I got it at a garage sale for $20. That was my first tent that I took with me.
You still have it?
I still do.
Yeah. See, that, I mean, that right there is the point, right? Because you can still get by with that, need be. Right, that can still be a viable option, so you don't have to go, buy a $500 shelter. I mean, it's nice to have those things that help on the mountain.
They're all luxuries, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you talk about any of us hunting that have been hunting for any amount of time, because we've seen this boom in tech, if you will, in terms of our gear in the last few years. It's really gone crazy, but the majority of folks, man, it was BDU stuff, right? I mean, you're talking cotton and maybe like Cabela's boots. There's still guys that are out killing every year that are still rocking the Walmart camo and, $100 dampers.
I lucked out with the boots my first year because somebody on Facebook, I just happened to open it. They just posted. Just bought these Solomons. They were my size. I wore them on one hike. I can't stand them. And I know because I went to, we don't have many places to try on boots here. Like, we don't. We've got a Cabela's Bass Pro, but let's face it, the majority of those workers are, minimum wage. They don't have a lot of hunting experience. They don't have a lot of knowledge with the products they're selling. We have an REI that's 2 hours from here, and we went up there, and that woman, and now I know they're not huge hunting advocates. I get it. But the woman about the boots, I told her what I was doing. I told her, the possibilities of what I'd be carrying on my back. She was explaining how the foot reacts under different weights, and like she was extremely thorough. So I knew that the Solomons would work for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was selling for like $80. I was like, oh, okay, because they're like a $300 boot. I snatched them up, and I got. So the thing with the Solomons, it seems like I can get about 2 years out of them. So I went with a better boot after a couple of years of hunting, But to get by, that's what I did. Otherwise, I'd have just been hunting in my whitetail boots, which they're lace-ups, so they would have had plenty of ankle support. But I would have struggled, I know,
So, I mean, going back to it, right, the point is for $100, you got a pair of boots that, would help you, and then you got a tent.
Yeah.
Are you like the 6-inch, or are you an 8-inch, 10-inch boot guy?
I run 6-inch.
Oh no shit! See, I don't really like the 6. I'd rather the 8s.
Yeah. I don't know what it is. Anytime I get them taller boots, they really rub my legs, and I start getting just raw from it. So the lower ones don't bother me as much, so that's why I run them. It's not really a preference.
Yeah, I'm kind of the opposite. I don't like how the 6-inch feel because I feel that around my ankle more than I do the 8s.
Got it.
It's a weird thing, isn't it?
I will tell you this. I learned quickly the sleeping pad is probably something you want to spend a little money on, because I got part of that tent. So actually it was $20 for the tent and a sleeping pad. And it was an ergo mat.
Mm-hmm.
And let me tell you, I spent 5 minutes on the ground on that thing, and I was miserable.
Oh, dude.
I was miserable. And so after year one, it stayed at the house. I ended up getting a climate insulated static V.
Mm-hmm.
It's like $60 it cost me, but
not anymore.
Oh no, they're more than that now.
Yeah, I think they're. I think for the insulated static V's now are $132.
Ooh,
yeah,
wow.
they've gone up. They've gone up quite a bit. I will say though that the quality in build is a little bit better than the earlier ones.
Okay.
Because I did this, I had, the $60 shit. I think I got one on sale for Big Five. I think I paid like $36.
Oh, nice.
Don't know why. I still have it. I don't know why it leaks air, but the son of a bitch leaks air. I mean, I've done everything. I think it's that valve.
It could be.
I soaked it trying to find the leak so I could plug it, man, and that thing just leaks and leaks. But there's nothing worse than exerting the amount of energy on the mountain and then having a crap night's sleep because either you're cold because you're on the ground or that damn thing deflated and you didn't do a thorough job. And I don't think you ever can of clearing the ground under the tent. There's something poking you in. It's just like, man, that's a lose-lose situation right there.
Absolutely.
It's horrible, horrible, horrible. But you don't have to overdo it on the gear. The only thing that I would add to that, because I agree with you on something that's going to take that load of the meat, but I would say with the availability and the cost of them now is some type of personal locator beacon, be it an InReach or the Zolios or a Spot.
Yeah, absolutely.
Some kind of emergency out, right? Especially because if we're talking to guys right now that, are looking at going or, that maybe they've already went, but this is year 2 or 3 and they're kind of exploring more. I would say having an emergency out, is a heck of a peace of mind, if not anything else.
Especially the good thing about them too is, like with the InReach, day 3 or 4, you're sleeping on the mountain, and now your mind's playing games with you because it will 100%. Your mind will start running off. You can send a text to your wife, or even if it's a pre-text, and she'll text you back, and it's a really nice peace of mind knowing you have just that little bit of communication to, for lack of better words, the outside world, right? Like you don't feel so desolate.
Yeah. Yeah, that isolation will do it unless you're, I actually enjoy that to a point, but it is nice to have that communication. It is, and then again, for the money, I think you can get the Zolios is kind of the same. Well, in terms of how you're able to communicate, like with the InReach, with that Iridium satellite, so you could actually text, full text, right? Depending on there's a plan, and I want to say the cheapest one is like $11.99. But for $200, it's more, there's another expenditure, but to be able to push a oh shit button and have emergency services there in some amount of time with your location is a big deal.
I think if you want to be comfortable and like have a really good solid elk hunt transitioning from, let's just say, a whitetail hunter, you're probably looking at about $1,000 in gear to be on the safe side. Like I said, you could probably get some garage sale stuff that will get you by a couple of years and you'll be just fine. But pack, boots, shelter, sleeping pad, and that InReach, you're probably looking at about $1,000.
Yeah, I'd agree. Yeah, you could definitely do it for that. And it really, you think about it, that's the downside is the off chance that you don't have a pulse and you're cold as a cadaver and you never want to go back, you just spend $1,000 that you're never going to use again, but you can probably sell it and get your money, some of your money back at the very least. But the chances are that these are things that you can use for years to come, unless you make the choice to upgrade as you learn and progress.
They're definitely investments.
Yeah, so you don't have to say, well, I need to spend $1,000 for my first year, and then I got to spend another $1,000 the next year. That's not the case. You can spend that $1,000, and if you're comfortable and you're happy with your situation, and you can make a hunt, then that $1,000 can last you, 4 or 5 years if you allow it to. The problem is that we fall sucker to the marketing so easily.
Yep. Every year I replace something. I always tell myself I'll allow myself one item to be replaced. And this year, thankfully, I don't have to replace anything. But I've been sleeping in a 0 degree because the first year we had some frigid nights. Mm-hmm. And this year, well, even last year wasn't too bad, but this year was I was sweating every night, and there was nothing I can do. So I'm going to have a 20 degree as a backup, so at least I have something that's not so heavy.
Right. I'm a proponent of the hammock setup, man. A hammock, a good tarp, a good bag, that goes a long, long way, man. I
tried the hammock thing.
Oh.
I can't. I don't know if it's just the way I sleep. I cannot get comfortable.
No way, dude. To me, it's the best. If you put me in a hammock, dude, chances are I'm falling asleep. Like if you know what I mean, we just set it up to break or something. Yeah. I'm passing out. Like I cannot do anything but sleep in them things. It is the best sleep. I love it. But for me, it's like, volume in the pack, cost. It hits on every aspect for me. Weather-wise, if you have a tarp and you think the weather's going to turn, you put the tarp over you and you're covered. There's really no difference between a tent, in my opinion, and the hammock setup with a tarp. If you think it's going to be on the colder side, take that static V insulated pad and you put it on the bottom of the hammock to offer a little more warmth. And if you're running the 0 degree, most nights you're not going to even zip that thing up. You're just going to have it in the hammock in case. Last year it was snowing and I was in my hammock, dude. It was just, I threw on my puffy and I would zip I was running the 0 degree, the Outdoor Vitals, and I'd zip that thing up probably, mid chest, if that, just below my chest. And, man, just out, dude. It's a phenomenal sleep. I swear by those hammocks. It's not for everybody because my buddy bought both of them. They brought their hammocks and, they couldn't sleep at night in the hammock. They would jump in the tents. They set their tents up too. And the hammock was like the nap spots. But for me, that's another option for guys too, because you can do some of those hammock setups for, man, I'm going to say less than $150.
Yeah, absolutely.
Freaking love those things.
I think the old man was sleeping in one this past year, and he got his from like Menards, which I don't know if those are nationwide or not, but basically it's just like a lumber company. They got a small section. Mm-hmm. And he got the hammock for like $25. And he just threw his sleeping bag and everything in it. And I mean, the whole setup didn't cost. He had the mountain ambush shelter and that hammock, and so he's probably $150 all in.
Okay, so you got a mountain ambush tarp. That's what, $69, and that thing is money, right? It's 10 by 10. It could be used as a ground shelter. It could be used over that hammock. Use it as a tarp just to get out of the weather. So then you get that, Menards $25, $30 hammock. You're right around the $100 mark with tax. So the only other thing you really need is your sleeping bag. I mean, in terms of guys looking at expenditures, that's pretty freaking minimal, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I ran just the mountain ambush shelter. Now, this was a new approach for me. I've never gone that tarp style shelter. Mm-hmm. And a guy coming from Indiana on a mountain with mountain lions and bears. And like literally the whole night I'm laying there thinking something was going to eat my face, but I needed that. It was something that, it was colder than hell. That's why we stopped for the day, is because the snowstorm got so bad. It didn't only snowed a few inches, but it came down like it was snowing feet. And it was like a real heavy, wet snow. So we got in our shelters, and basically I slept in snow underneath that shelter, and the wind was roaring, and that one side was flat. I didn't have it staked down right. It was flapping the whole time. I'm waiting for like a mountain lion to peek its face around there to eat me up. I was like, I'm going to die. I slept horribly, and I'm looking across this frozen tundra, what I thought it was, to my buddies in his Big Agnes or whatever the heck he runs, all zipped up, snore. I can hear him snoring. I'm like, this is bullshit.
Sorry, go ahead.
But I think it helped me. I made it through the night. Everything's good. I was good. I don't know. It was just something that I had to do.
Yeah.
And I enjoy it now. I like it now.
I think a lot of guys think that zipper on the tent is going to take the things that go bump in the night away. You know what I mean? How many dudes are laying in there?
It's just a peace of mind.
Yeah, but is it really? You know what I mean? At least if my head's sticking out a little bit, I know what part the mountain lion or bear is going to grab.
Right.
It really isn't. Yeah, it doesn't do much. It cracks me up. Like my buddy Caesar, he's like, I can't do it. I got to sleep in the tent. It's like, all right, bro. That's a funny element. But the mountain ambush tarp, man. If a guy gets a tarp, just a bait, I don't care if you go to Harbor Freight and get a tarp, if that's, if you're just trying to do the damn thing, if you play with it prior to getting out there and you set it up, man, and you kind of A-frame it or you lean to, there's little different configurations that you can do with a square tarp. If you guy them out right, stake them down right, and play with it, you can get daggum near a enclosed shelter, right? I mean, it lends itself to, some manipulating. And that's another point, right? Is play with that gear, prior to getting out on the mountain. Understand what it's capable of, what it's not capable of, and just play with it in the yard, see how comfortable you are.
Absolutely.
Those ambush tarps, man, for the money are money.
Yeah. You can't beat it.
No, it just.
I don't know if you know the guy, he owns the company, Jacked Gear. His name's Jeff Ellis. So I met him at the Archery Challenge. And we're sitting down for pizza and a beer after day 1 or 2. And I don't know the guy from Adam. I just met him. And he says, we get to talking. We run the same pack. We run the same shelter. The whole same sleep system. We run it the same. I don't have a bag. I don't carry a bag with me. So I only run the load panel on the frame. That's how I run. Even if I'm going a couple days, I'll throw the bag on. Mm-hmm. But typically, I run just a load panel with the lid. That's it. And I'll throw a dry bag in between the load panel and the frame, where I'll keep my Ziploc bag of food and my rain gear. And that's how I hunt all the time. And so he runs the mountain ambush shelter. He runs the IA pack. He runs just a dry bag between, like we were talking, and it was pretty cool. And I just met the guy. I didn't know. It was pretty cool how the only difference is that he's a absolute animal, and he hikes in 7 or 8 miles, sets up a spike camp, and hunts another 4 or 5 miles from there. Like he does it.
That's there's some beast out there. Meat care though. That's the biggest thing, especially solo, right? I mean, you have to have a plan. I don't care if you're not solo. You got to have a plan in terms of meat care.
Absolutely.
When you're talking, that animal may net, call it 400 to 500 pounds of meat. And that's probably a little bit on the heavy side if you're talking, a place like Colorado, but, you got to be able to deal with that meat.
Yeah.
So that's a hell of a consideration for guys that don't know, right? And I'm making a hell of an assumption because I'm not a Midwest hunter, but the drive up the road and then walk out to the stand 200 yards, then I can drag that deer that's not even field dressed to that road, throw him in the back of the truck, and then take him to the shop and do my butchering. That ain't the case. And then when you're talking, an animal the size of an elk and manipulating that animal just to be able to get it quartered and dressed, that's all time that meat is at risk, right? So you have to temper what you think you're capable of, and understand that extra 4 miles on top of that 7 is going to pose something, right? I mean, now if you got a fresh running creek and you prepared and you can, dip those quarters in that creek and it's running and it's going to help keep them cool, you bought yourself some time, but it's definitely a heck of a consideration.
Yeah. So he hunts all over the place. He's pretty good about it, I guess.
Yeah, some guys have it figured out, man. It's like my early season hunt here. It's typically 110 to 115 degrees, and we're back quite a ways.
I'm sitting my ass in the air conditioner.
Yeah, and dude, it is absolutely. I don't even know why I do it. I it's miserable. But when you kill that animal, the first and primary with any animal, right, is that one shot, quick kill. Hopefully he falls within an eye shot. But you're shooting him. You're hoping you watch him fall so you can get over there, get your shit handled. And it's, everything is going and it's packing out right now. And it is a flip and run. Because at 110 degrees, and I mean, you're talking 110 degrees by 9 o'clock in the morning, it'll teach you some shit about meat care. You don't have a choice. But to look at an animal the size of an elk and think that that's going to happen is, nah. I mean, you figure what? Call it 60 pounds, 50 to 60 pounds per quarter, maybe 70 on a rear quarter. That's a lot of pack weight, man. If you think you're going to pack 2 of those out and run, what did you say, 7 and 4? So 11 miles. That's brutal. That is absolutely brutal. You need some trekking poles for sure.
Yeah.
So, man, we've kind of hit a bunch, man. What would you, before we wrap this, what a guy, getting prepared, give us your top 5 focus points for a guy looking to undertake this coming from the back east or the Midwest?
I would say getting in shape, making sure I know a lot of guys are like, oh, I'll hunt, like, I get it. But get in some sort of shape, even if you're just walking around the block a couple times a week, do something because it's better than nothing. Get yourself moving. You're scouting, so I know you can't scout, but you can e-scout. And if you want my honest opinion, I would say Treeline Academy with Mark Levisay will be your absolute best bet for any e-scouting platform. It is a little dry. It's just him standing in front of the camera talking and going over maps. But that man, he's got it figured out, and he really just dives into every little bit, any type of transformation in timber and beetle kills, and like he breaks everything down. And it was the most thorough training I've gone through as far as e-scouting. It's absolutely, I would say that should probably be one of your number one things you pay for. Because if nothing else, you can find your way around to find out that way. And if you're going to stick with programs, I'd say get like your OnX or base map. So get those things in order so you know where you're going. You have an idea of how to get where elk live. Like you had mentioned earlier, I would say another focal point would be knowing your gear inside and out. Set up your tent 5 or 6 times. Get used to it. Knowing that your boots fit, knowing that all your stuff is ready to go. That you're familiar with it, because there's nothing worse that you get out there and you have no idea what you're doing. You're spending hours fiddling with stuff, trying to get it dialed in. And I would say other than that, I mean, calling. You don't have to be an expert, but at least try to get the basics down. There's plenty of sources out there for that. And you can pretty much Google elk calling, and you're going to get the Elk Nut. You're going to get Michael Batiste, Elk Calling Academy. All those. Corey Jacobson, Elk 101. He's on a podcast. But there's a lot of avenues for that as well that you can jump on and really get dialed in there.
So I'm going to add to it. Just go. You don't have, you know what I mean? With everything that we've said, you don't have anything to lose in terms of just getting out in the woods. And worst case scenario, you go out, you strike out, you learn about yourself, you learn what not to do, you learn how to prepare for the next season. But you can't do that from the living room wishing that you were there.
You're going to have failures for sure.
Oh, absolutely. You're
going to have failures, and that's the best thing that can happen to you. Hands down. That's the best thing. That's the best thing for you. I mean, listen, again, I'm going to reiterate this. I am not an elk hunting expert. I mean, I'm just scratching the surface on this whole elk hunting thing. But for me, my biggest gains are my failures in this whole standpoint. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. Just pack the truck and go.
That's it. And don't fail by not getting a subscription to Derek's Mountain Hunter Box.
Extremely important.
Well, especially
if you're planning your hunt.
So let's get a little plug. Let's get a shameless plug for Mountain Hunter Box, right? And there is some valuable stuff. I mean, and for the subscription cost and what you're getting in terms of gear that you can tinker with and take viable gear that you can take out on the mountain, man, it's a big deal. So why don't you plug Mountain Hunter Box and where they can get it?
Sure. Mountain Hunter Box is a monthly subscription for backcountry hunting gear, or I just say back because it's Western hunting gear. So anything hunting in the mountains out west, hunting, camping, and survival gear. And sign up for monthly, 3 month, 6 month, or 12 month. The longer the duration, the better the deal. If you were, I'm going to be very clear. If you are just a Midwest whitetail hunter or just a whitetail turkey hunter, you're probably not going to use a lot of stuff in the box because you're going to get a lot of meals and quite a bit of camp gear that Western guys use that guys from the Midwest and even Eastern guys probably don't use. But you can get that at themountainhunterbox.com. And right now we are running I think you still have your coupon code going.
Yeah.
Is that Western Contours, right?
Yeah, I'll throw it in the show notes in the description.
Okay. Yeah, so you still get a discount through Western Contours. But if you guys have any questions, you can reach out to me on Instagram, Mountain Hunter Box on Instagram, Mountain Hunter Box on Facebook. I'm on Go Wild. I've got a small little deal on Pinterest just to stay relevant. I don't really know anything about Pinterest, so I threw a couple pictures up and called it good. So if you get a delay in that, I'm sorry. I'm not on there a lot. But if you have any questions, I'm happy to reach out and I'll be happy to help anyone I can.
Heck yeah, brother. Well, I appreciate it, man. We'll have to chop it up a little bit and see where this season's going to land you. But wish you the best out there, man. It'll be fun to see you bring that bull home this year.
Man, I'm chomping. I'm chomping at the bit this year.
So anxious.
We're gonna punch the old man's tag for sure.
Heck yeah, I am so flippin' anxious.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely, man. Thank you for the time.
All right, brother.
Thank you for listening. Follow Western Contours on Instagram, subscribe on YouTube, and sign up at westerncontours.com. Episodes are available on most major platforms, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Stitcher. Subscribe, leave us a comment, and don't forget to hit that 5-star rating. We appreciate the support, and until next time, lay 'em down.